Hi everybody, my name is Hannah and this is Pepper and Pine, and today I have a curriculum comparison to share with you. I have the Oak Meadow 5th grade curriculum as well as the Live Education curriculum. Now I have reviews of both of these curricula on my channel and I'm linking those videos down below and at the end of this video. Actually, it's more of an unboxing for the Oak Meadow, not so much a review. Now the first thing I'm going to do is just quickly show you all the books that come with each curriculum, and then I'm going to compare them. So because I already have videos on this, we're going to just go through this really quickly. So for the Oak Meadow for 5th grade, you get a math workbook, and this looks like it's a consumable, although you could certainly copy pages if you've got more than one student. And you get your science book. You get your math course book, which is different from the workbook. You get your teacher's manual for grade 5. This is what the teacher will use as an oversight for 3 of the subject areas: English, social studies, and science. And then you have your English and your United States history book. And they're all quite chunky. They're really big. They're quite heavy. And I'll be comparing this later, but also the text itself is like a good size. I don't know the font size number, but it is a good size. It is larger than the Live Education curriculum. The last thing I want to show you that comes with the Oak Meadow curriculum are books that the student will read as part of the English and social studies subjects. And these are all history books and historical fiction to go along with the history unit. All right, so let me show you really quickly what comes with the Live Education curriculum. It's quite a bit smaller. These are the main lesson books. You get one for ancient India, ancient Mesopotamia, Persia, Greek mythology, geometry, ancient Egypt, Botany, and then this is the introduction for the whole entire year, giving you information on how to set up your whole school year. All right, so let's get to comparing these two curricula and trying to figure out what's going to suit your family depending on your needs and your child's needs. So I'm going to keep all of the books that come with the Oak Meadow curriculum aside. At least you know that it comes with the curriculum, which I think is really great to have that all included so you don't have to worry about going out and getting those books additionally to the curriculum. But both of the curricula are going to recommend a few other resources that I'll explain in a minute. The first thing that I want to point out about the Live Education curriculum is that it comes with this introductory book that kind of gives you an oversight of the entire curriculum, the whole year, the subjects that are going to be taught, why they're going to be taught, how you're going to organize them throughout the year, and a little bit about the philosophy behind the Waldorf education. Now, originally, I thought that Oak Meadow was a lot more Waldorf inspired, but taking a look at it now, I feel like it is not Waldorf at all. Not at least for 5th grade and not with the revised edition. This is the revised curriculum. I know that with the younger years, kindergarten and 1st grade and a little bit into 2nd grade, I saw a lot more things that adhered or at least were inspired by the Waldorf curriculum, and that's why I wanted to do this comparison. But now that I'm taking a closer look at both of these curricula, I realize that they are really, really different. For the Oak Meadow, you are going to have a more traditional approach to your subjects, and you're going to have it a lot more child-led. So with all this glare, I want to open up this book so that you can at least see what's going on inside. This is the English and the United States history book, and the books are set up pretty similar for all of the different course books that you get. The first thing is that, of course, you get a table of contents which has all of the different subjects that you're going to do. And the thing that I noticed first, and I did have to review this because I wasn't sure the first time I saw this, but it has 36 lessons, and really that's for the 36 school weeks. So this is still 180 school days, 36 weeks, a standard school year, but each lesson that you're going to go through in the book, it's actually supposed to take an entire week. So I like that approach because then you're not being locked into this is exactly what you have to do on a daily basis, which could be a little bit more structure and scheduling than a family may want, but it still has some scheduling because you are required to do that work within a week. This is pretty student-led. By 5th grade, they say that students are really ready for a lot more independent work. And so the introduction is set up for both the student and the parent. So there's a section for the student to read. There's, of course, like tips and materials and organization, but then what I really like is that there's this whole section for the parent to read, so the parent can be familiar with what's going to happen for the whole school year in regards to this curriculum and in regards to what the parent can expect the child to do. Then there's the assessments and ways to see how your child is doing. And then this part is really great because it's something that I've overlooked regarding the Oak Meadow curriculum, but Oak Meadow also has their distant learning program. And within the curriculum, there are pages that explain if you are enrolled with Oak Meadow as a distant learner, then there are certain things that you need to be turning in on a regular basis and staying in communication with your teacher. So I really like that is included with every single course book. What's nice as well is that it does come with a student planner. Now it's in this book, you're not going to find it in the other books, so you can go ahead and write it in for all the different subjects. It's in here and it's a weekly lesson plan, which I think is really great. So it can kind of allow you to plan out what you're going to do. And what's kind of neat is that it actually has 7 days, like 7 slots here, which is kind of neat. All right, so the book itself, or the course book, is designed primarily for the student. At least that's what I gather by reading through it. Overall, I think that if you have multiple students, or rather multiple grades, and you are homeschooling and you're trying to find a way to have them each do an individualized curriculum, but that you can't really be there always in order to give each lesson, then this would seem like a really good way to go. It's not that your child could do the entire thing on his or her own all the time. There are students that are going to need more work, but it's designed in a way that's really child-led. At least that's what I've seen from it. Now, we don't intend to use this curriculum. Oak Meadow sent this curriculum to me to give to our charter school. Actually, we are part of a charter school. After seeing the first curriculum review that I'm also linking down below so you can take a look at that. But I was doing a curriculum comparison with their old version, and so they want to send me the updated version so that it could be a little bit more current for people who are actually looking to buy this curriculum, rather than finding one that's used and maybe, secondhand for the older unupdated curriculum. All right, so this is basically the English and the United States history together. I like the way that they have merged those two subjects together. It seems like really a great way to add your reading, which is primarily not just in the book, but the reading books that they provided for you are your English books, but they're about history, and so it's going to coordinate with your social studies for the year. So for history, it's going to be U.S. history. And for English, there's going to be a lot with vocabulary, spelling, grammar, and writing, which is pretty typical for most grades. You just keep increasing those skills, but especially for 5th grade, the writing is going to become a little bit more intense. All right, so let's move on to the teacher's manual. This is what the teacher will use as an oversight for the 3 subjects, English, social studies, and science. And then there's a separate course workbook and course book for math. And this gives you, which is really great, your little checklist here so that you can stay on track with what you need to do. It doesn't just give you the things that your child should be reading and doing, but it also gives you some ideas on how you can alter the lessons and add to the lessons so that you're keeping it pretty dynamic and interesting. And in case there are words, for instance, that are not listed here in the spelling words or in the vocabulary words, you can add those in as needed depending on the reading and your child's ability. I also like that they haven't given you a ton of practice when it comes to different questions. This whole curriculum is still going to take about an hour per day per subject, but I like how it's kind of broken up. It's not overkill. I really dislike when workbooks are overkill when it comes to proficiency of pretty much any subject. I understand that you're going to need that in order to become skilled at that particular subject matter, but sometimes overkill just really kind of kills the whole lesson. So here there's just 4 or 5 questions, then another 5 questions that are independent of what was given, something that you can come up with on your own, and I really like that. I also like all of the area on the side for writing notes and any other thing that you might need. I like that that's been designed into the curriculum. All right, so let's move on to the math course book. Now, the whole math curriculum has been updated and revised completely. And with the 5th grade curriculum for math, it is still primarily child-led. However, you will still need to explain new math concepts to your child for ones that he doesn't know or needs an additional help with. But the math workbook that comes with this curriculum seems really well laid out. It's not like way too much work. It's just enough, in my opinion. I feel like when you get to that point where it becomes just too tedious, you're just not going to be interested in the math. And then when you dislike that particular subject, it's really hard to progress and be excited about it. The course book comes with suggestions on how to do the whole school, or rather the whole layout for the math course, because it's not just workbook based. It's not just going to be, here are your lessons for the week, so lesson 1 is for the entire week. It actually breaks down the week or the day into a variety of lessons, which I think are really great. So in addition to the math workbook, you are also going to be doing some mental math. You'll have a skills check, new skills practice, and a lesson test. The lesson test will come at the end of the week. And this is a really great way to do a little bit every day and not have it be too heavy for the student. And the mental math, that's my favorite, because mental math is just so important. Any math curriculum, even if your math curriculum doesn't include it, I would suggest that you find a way to do that for just a couple of minutes every day. This one gives you an idea on how to do mental math without having to write up a bunch of questions ahead of time, which I think is fantastic. They give you a couple of different versions on how to do this with cards, which pretty much everybody has them, and if you don't, you can easily find a deck of cards. So the additional materials for this particular subject are not very many. I think at the beginning they just suggest some dice and some cards and maybe one other thing, but really super simple and easy to find. So you can take 2 cards, you flip them over, and you add them together, and if your sum is greater than the sum of the player that you're playing against or your parent, then you get to keep all 4 cards. And at the end of the game, whoever has either the most cards or the most points win. I can't remember. Most cards wins. And then another version is to flip over 2 cards and double each figure on the card and then add them together, which again, super great. For many years, I made up my own mental math problems, and this really kind of makes it easy. There's one other book that could also be helpful for you if you're looking to add this in, and it's called Number Chains. Picked this one up a couple years ago, and it was a great addition to our curriculum as well. All right, so I've got one more book to show you, and that would be the science curriculum. And this one is set up pretty similarly to the other subjects, not math, but the other ones, in that the beginning of the book has, of course, the introduction, and then it has for the enrolled students. So it has the parent section, the assessments, and then it has this section here for the enrolled students if you are enrolled with Oak Meadow and you are in contact with a teacher there. So this book, again, is set up very much for the student. This is heavy on the reading, so So the information and the suggestions for the introduction for a lot of the books for the English, the social studies, and the science are similar in that it reminds the student that there's a lot of reading that needs to be done before you do the written questions, and to take the time to do that, and that you can split up the reading over a couple of days because each lesson takes an entire week. So you kind of have to shift your thinking on what a lesson is, because if you're thinking lesson 1, then you're thinking, oh, that has to be done in one day. And really, you have an entire week to do that particular lesson. However, you could always look at this a little bit more in a mini unit study format if you really wanted to dive into one particular subject for an entire day and do science on Monday and math on Tuesday and history on Wednesday. You could do that too, as long as you got the work done within a week. Especially if you're an enrolled student, you're going to want to make sure that you're getting that stuff done at least within every 2 weeks, because you turn in your work after 2 lesson tests. So I'm imagining that's about every 2 weeks. So for the science curriculum, again, you have the pages that you need to read in the book. This is what's really great about this curriculum. It's all in the books that are provided. You do not need to add more resource books or library books or books that you buy. You just don't need to do that. Obviously, it's encouraged that you do, especially if your child finds a particular subject area within science or within history that she likes and wants to explore, then by all means, then it's encouraged that you go with that interest. This science curriculum also comes with experiments to do, and those things you will need to buy extra as far as like the materials if you do not have them. But what I noticed was that it was pretty well laid out as far as what you need and how to do the experiment, which is really great. If doing science experiments is not your thing, the way that it's laid out really makes it easy for you to incorporate that into your science curriculum. All right, so that's basically an overview of this curriculum, and it's again a lot more traditional based in that you have your different subjects. They're pretty separate, except for the history and history and the English work pretty well together. It is not a unit study approach. It is not a main lesson approach. It is doing each of these subjects a little bit every day. And so you're looking at about 4 to 5 hours of school every day for 5 days a week. Let's contrast that to the Waldorf curriculum by Live Education. Again, the first thing you're going to want to review is the introduction to the 5th year. This is going to provide a lot of information on the philosophy, as well as this idea of main lesson blocks, and also why you're getting certain subject areas and why you're not getting certain subject areas, because when I show you the different subject areas, they're obviously going to look so different than what the Oak Meadow curriculum has. So the first thing to take note of is this whole idea of a main lesson. Now, main lesson blocks are a little different than unit studies. Now, sometimes I use the term interchangeably because it's just a little more familiar to use unit study, but a main lesson differs from a unit study in that it's not going to include all the different subject areas into that main lesson. Usually it's simply a focus on a particular subject area for a period of time. In this curriculum, the periods of time range from 3 weeks to 6 weeks. And this is going to totally be adequate and with enough preparation. I always found that I needed more time than the time that they suggested. And again, this is for a 36-week school year. And the other problem that I found that was having to do main lessons for multiple grades, which I'm going to explain how we tackled that issue. Again, you're also probably going to notice that there's quite a imbalance, I would say, of subject areas. It's not really the correct way to say this, but you're going to have your geometry unit, which is 6 weeks, and your botany unit, which is 6 weeks. So you basically have your math and your science. But then you have 5 different subject areas for history, for ancient history. However, they are 3 weeks long, so they're going to be smaller they're going to be smaller main lesson blocks, but still you're not going to have a separate one for, say, your daily regular math, and you're not going to have a separate one for writing and reading and other language arts subjects like grammar and spelling, vocabulary. It will be included in the curriculum, and I'll explain how that's included. So then, what are you going to do with all these extra history units, and what are you going to do with the extra time in the day if you're only spending 2 hours roughly a day doing your main lesson? Well, there's a lot more that goes on in the day, and this book is going to explain how to organize your school day and what is going to make up the rest of your school day, because you are still going to be covering all those different subject areas. You're just going to be covering them in a way that's different than what you are typically doing. So the way that you are going to be doing your day is by beginning your day with some opening activities. Now, this can include a number of things. For us, it typically included some mental math, possibly some spelling, and then maybe some reading from like a poetry book, but it can vary for each family. Some of the things that are suggested in this curriculum are some songs that you can sing, some poems or speech exercises. You can do some mental math, which I highly suggest that you do, and times tables. The times tables are included here because that is a review of what was covered previously in the younger years. You have recorder practice. The recorder is introduced in grade 1. You have physical activities. I never did physical activities for open activities except on very few occasions where we got a piece of wood that we put on some bricks and we made our own little balance beam. The kids love that. We haven't done that in a really long time, but that would be something that would be fun. It's physical, but it also has a lot of other skills that would help nurture the brain and prepare it for the school day. Spelling and vocabulary practice are also included, and verses or prayers to open the lesson. Doing each of these things for just 10 or 15 minutes a day would be up to an hour or 2 hours of day just for these opening activities. So you can see that you're addressing a lot of different subject areas in these really tiny little blocks, these really small lessons that will then give way for this large main lesson that you will spend the bulk of your time doing in a day. The review time is so important in this curriculum. The 3-day learning cycle is something that's very unique, in my opinion, for the Waldorf curriculum. It's when you introduce the subject matter on the first day, and on the second day, you will be introducing new subject matter while you're reviewing the old subject matter in the form of a drawing or in a written narration. Then on the third day, you're going to be reviewing the work from the second day, as well as reviewing the work from the first day, which will again be either a written narration or a drawing, depending on what you did the previous day. And then, of course, introducing the new material for that day. So it can get a little confusing, I know, and while this is absolutely one of the best ways to keep the learning alive in a very organic way, I know that we were not able to do this successfully all the time. It sometimes happened naturally, but it wasn't always intentional. When you allow the information to settle and almost have it be forgotten when you sleep at night and then you revisit the following day, this is a really important learning technique, and it really helps the child learn and understand the material. There are a few things that you're going to need for this curriculum. You will need some main lesson books. They are not included, but you can certainly find them from other vendors online. This one happens to have the lined paper on one side, the blank paper on the other side. You could always make your own. This is just with drawing paper and some construction paper. We made these and took them over to an office supply store to have them bound. You will also need some color pencils and of course some regular pencils. These are the Lyra brand, which we really enjoyed over the years. Went ahead and made a little pencil holder for it as well. And the other thing that you're going to need are some Key to Fractions and Key to Decimal workbooks. These are by the Key to Curriculum series. We really enjoy this series of math workbooks, and the curriculum itself highly recommends that you add these into it because this curriculum does not come with a workbook for any of the grades. They don't come with any workbooks. So the teacher is encouraged to come up with her own questions, but those ones will be really useful to help keep those skills sharp because they were learned the previous year. All right, so for botany, you're looking at a 6-week main lesson block on plants. And this is one of my favorite main lessons. I will link the complete playlist at the end of this video so you can see all the lessons that we've done with this book. Again, you will need a main lesson book in order to do your narrations and your drawings in, and that's something else. There isn't a separate writing program for the main lessons like as by itself, but there's writing in all of the main lessons, except for geometry, that there wasn't that much writing for geometry. It also comes with lesson activities. So each lesson is going to come with the section here that you actually is for the teacher. This is completely the opposite of child-led. This is very teacher-involved of a curriculum. And also you might notice that there isn't a lot of extra space. These little workbooks, or not workbooks, main lesson books, are really small, but they are really packed with information. The lessons proceed in the following way. The teacher reads the information ahead of time and then delivers an oral lesson. And then on the following day, you can draw one of the pictures that are given as an example, or you can draw your own. And then on the third day, or part of the second day, or even part of the first day, you can do one of the lesson activities that are suggested in here. I like that multiple lesson activities are suggested so that you can pick and choose, or you can do multiple lesson activities. And then what's really great about the curriculum as well is that it gives either a writing, narration, or dictation exercise that's included with every lesson for the botany workbook, at least. Sorry, the botany main lesson book. Now, what I've noticed is that sometimes I will have my child simply copy the narration exercise that was here. So that would count as copywork. On occasion, I will recite this and my child will write it down in his main lesson book, and that will be dictation. On other occasions, I'll have my child do his own narration, and it may look like something that was written in the book, or it may be entirely unique based on his own interpretation of the lesson. So that's 3 ways that you are going to be doing writing every day. You have those 3 different options. Now, as far as spelling and vocabulary, what I usually do, if it's his own personal narration, then we will do that as a rough draft first, and I will have my child correct his rough draft first before he hands it to me in order to get corrected. When I see words that are spelled wrong that I think he should know, then we will practice those words. If there are new words that I didn't think that he would know how to spell, but I think they're going to be talked about in the lesson, then I might write those on the chalkboard first, or have him look them up in the book or in a dictionary first, because I anticipate that he may need to use those words. I forgot to show you that at the beginning of the botany book, as well as the other main lesson books, it comes with some sources that the teacher may want to purchase in order to help with background information for the lessons. And while we were not able to find some of the ones that were mentioned, we did find the ABCs of Nature. This is by Reader's Digest. We really enjoyed this book because it really covered a lot of the topics that we needed for botany, and I imagine that it's going to cover other subject areas that we'll need for future main lesson. So if you can't find something to own, you can certainly go to the library and find some additional resources. The next book I want to show you is the geometry book. Now this one is going to be really different than what you would expect geometry to be, and plus this is geometry for a 5th grader, which is really different than what you would typically find in a traditional school when you're still working on basic arithmetic. I really like the approach of geometry in the Waldorf school. It is artistic, and it's also historical, which really works well for this age group. I also have lessons on a lot of these different, or videos on a lot of these different lessons, and that video is linked below and also at the end of this video so that you can check it out. What I also like about this curriculum is that it goes into history as well as geometry. So you're going into the geometers and mathematicians of the past and making them relevant to the geometry that you're studying right now. It's also a very artistic approach. You're not going to see a lot of math and theorems and mathematical computations for geometry. That's saved for a later age. But don't forget that you still will want to do some daily math, both as mental math and also with your Key 2 series. This main lesson block should run about 6 weeks. I found that we needed more time than that to do this. And also, though this is dedicated to the 5th grade student, I found that this particular main lesson block works for as young as 4th grade all the way to 8th grade. So if you've got multiple students and you're trying to figure out how to combine them, this happens to be a great lesson to combine with multiple grade levels. All right, so now we're looking at the last 5 books, and they are all for ancient history. So we're going to kind of go through these as one big block. These are all 3-week main lesson blocks, and each book has a similar format. You're always going to find at the beginning of the book a table of contents as well as an introduction to the whole unit, as well as the additional resources that are suggested for each main lesson block. Now, even if you can't get the additional resources, there's quite a bit of information for each lesson that you could read this prior to doing your lesson, and that's usually enough information for you to deliver a lesson. These lessons are not typically read aloud in the Waldorf curriculum and in the Waldorf philosophy. The lessons are usually oral and more in a storytelling format. Even if it's factual information, it's still delivered as a story. You can imagine it like a lecture, but more like a story. And each lesson also comes with either some artwork or something to kind of spark inspiration for artwork for the main lesson book. Now, you can always do your own original art. I found that the drawings were really helpful for me in particular. You don't have to do a drawing every day, but it does make for a really nice main lesson book. I know that when it came to the chalk drawings and I was doing them every day, it was just too long and exhausting. So now what I'll do is I'll put up 1 or 2 chalk drawings for an entire unit, and it just stays there as classroom art, decoration, and inspiration for that entire unit. And then I have smaller chalkboards, or I can just do this on paper and I will draw whatever lesson or whatever drawing needs to go with that lesson. Now, something else, if you are finding that you simply do not have the time to do an involved curriculum like this, I've got 2, maybe 3 shortcuts for you. The first thing is that you can simply read this lesson aloud. I have done that on so many occasions when I do not have time to prepare. Sometimes I will just read the information that's really intended for me as resource information. And then on occasion, I will just have my child copy the drawing out of the book. And this really saves a lot of time. Now, with the lesson activities, if you don't have time to do a more involved lesson activity, simply doing a written narration is a great option. If you've got multiple kids in different grades, then you're going to have to cut some corners and not have everything be so involved. And doing something that's more simple, like a narration or even copywork or dictation, is going to be making it a lot easier. Now, though we didn't do this as a main lesson last year, we did do this as a unit study, and you can see all the projects that we did. I've linked that in the description box below. And the projects that we did would enhance a main lesson block. So even if you have this curriculum and you're doing it by the book, you may choose to add, like, say, an excavation kit to the mix, or maybe make your own papyrus, and those things would really work well with this curriculum. For ancient Greek mythology, you have, again, the table of contents. You've got a couple of recommended books. We do have the Greek myths book. This is really easy to read, and it's really simply illustrated, and it's a great resource book to have. But even if you don't, I feel like the curriculum still comes with enough information for you to be able to do the lessons without too many additional resource books, as well as, of course, all of the original artwork, which is beautiful. So you're going to have basically the same approach with the rest of the ancient history books. This one happened to have a lot of really beautiful watercolors and pencil drawings, and so for our main lesson book, we chose to do some simply as watercolors for the entire main lesson book, which is also an option. You end up with a really beautiful student work at the end of the year. You end up with some really beautiful artwork, some really great written narrations, and it's just a really wonderful approach. But it is more time consuming, in my opinion, both because it is teacher-led, you're teaching these subjects. It's not so much child-led, and also all the artwork does take a lot of time. But I'll say that in the end, it is so worth it for a lot of different reasons. The first reason is that doing the artwork to begin with trains a part of your brain that is not going to be trained the same way when you're doing regular writing and reading and composition work. When you're doing artwork, it touches a different part of your heart. And when you're done with that artwork, you hopefully feel really happy and proud with your work. That's immediately. But later, the benefit of doing a main lesson book is that you get to look back on that work. It becomes your natural review process. And it also makes for some amazing homeschool memories. We have main lesson books from years and years ago, and they are treasures. We'll just never get rid of them. And I've never seen my children swoon over a math worksheet as they have over their main lesson books. All right, so I hope that gives you a fair comparison between the two curricula, and I hope that this is enough for you to decide which curriculum is going to best suit you, your family, and your kids. One is more distinctly child-led, one is more distinctly teacher-led. They're both valuable, and they're both great assets to your homeschool, whichever one you choose. But I think having the information up front is the best way for you to figure out how it's going to work for you. One thing that I need to make a note of here is that while we have not used the Oak Meadow curriculum, we have used the live education curriculum, and while it is more of a time investment, I have to say that for the most part, my kids haven't complained about doing this work. On occasion, they may, but in general, because of the way the main lesson blocks rotate, it's always been kind of interesting to see what's the next main lesson, or just that excitement that you get when you start the school year. You get this multiple times in the year because you're starting a new main lesson block. And with the Oak Meadow curriculum, because you're doing repetitive work week after week, you may find that your child starts to find it tedious and repetitive, and that's something that you as a teacher will have to find ways to creatively make the lessons more interesting. But because it's more child-led, I feel like it allows you to have a curriculum that's complete, that your child can do, and you can do this with multiple grade levels because they can each have their own workbook and set of course books. However, even though this is really dedicated to 5th grade, I feel like it has greater potential to alter and modify into unit lessons, unit studies, so that you can have more students doing one lesson, and that again will cut down on your time to do multiple lessons with all of your kids every day. So these are things to consider when you are going to be looking for your curriculum for the upcoming school year. If you have any questions, don't forget you can leave them in the comment section below.